Looks like we are connecting. Hey guys. Hey everybody, I am super excited to be back on the Between the Lines. As you can see, I'm by myself tonight, which is kind of a bummer. Of course, we miss having Katie around. Katie is always the peanut butter to my jelly, if you will. But Katie, unfortunately, cannot be here. She's just had actually a spinal fusion, I think that's what you call it. It's a little bit crazy, but unfortunately, Katie can't be here. So I'm going to do everything that I can to entertain you guys tonight. And hopefully we can talk all about the book. I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely loved this month's book. Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt. If you didn't get the book, I'll post the link down below so that you guys can get a copy of the book for, I don't know, a beach read or something like that this summer. But what I found kind of getting back to what this book club started at is Katie and I actually talked earlier this week in prep for Between the Lines, and what we were sharing with each other is that this is totally like our love language. This is the book that, you know, is tactical. It's all about this is what you go ahead and do, and this is how you can make those changes. And we just really like loved it, as opposed to something like, you know, The Alchemist, which we kind of struggled with and we really had to like use our brains with. But what I want to tell you guys about that is we both also made a commitment that part of why we're doing this is we want to grow and we want to become better leaders and better professionals and better humans. And really part of why we do this is to accomplish that. And in that, in its own right, we are going to have more difficult books moving forward that are not our kind of love language, if you will. And they aren't going to, you know, do everything that this book tells us, say, this is step 1, step 2, step 3. So I want to prepare you guys for that. But if you have any questions, please join in the discussion down below. We'd love to hear from you guys tonight and hear more about what you thought from the book. Obviously, since it's just me, we're going to have it be a little bit abbreviated today. I'm sure you guys don't want to hear me jammer on the whole time. And we obviously are wishing Katie the best. Katie, hey, we're praying for a quick recovery, and you are absolutely in our thoughts. So what was this book about for those of you guys that truly do embrace Between the Lines and don't read the book? Well, the book was all about the idea of free to focus was all about, you know, in this kind of attention economy, if you will, we're focusing on everything. And as we focus on everything, in fact, you're focusing on nothing. We're not giving our full attention to almost anything in our lives. And that is actually doing exactly the opposite of what we hope it will do. We try to give our attention to things in hopes of being more productive and in hopes of, in theory, creating more free time. But in truth, when we do things like multitask and when you do things like rush through things and we're constantly connected on our phones, we're not actually being more productive. We're busier, our mind is going faster, but we're not really productive in those things and what we're trying to accomplish. So I love the idea of this. And he goes into actually explaining here on page 14 what this actually costs us. And so the time, as he puts it, he says, the cost of all of this misspent time and talent is staggering. Depending on the studies you consult, the total time lost per day for office workers is 3 hours or more, as many as 6 hours. Let's say you work 250 days a year, 365 days, less weekends, and 2 weeks of vacation. That's between 750 and 1,500 hours of lost time every year. That statistic is staggering to me. It is insane that this is the amount of time that we're losing just because we're not able to focus on one singular thing. And that really is not what we want to do. And Hyatt goes into kind of, he goes through how to set up his plan for focusing on more of the right things. As he puts it, productivity is not about getting more things done. It's about getting the right things done. I'll say that one more time because that one really hit home with me. It's not about getting more things done. It's about getting the right things done. And one of the things that he does and the exercises that he has in this is one of those things that I think is really important when you're talking about productivity is he poses the question of, okay, say you were vastly productive, like you were way more productive. You did create all of this free time that you're constantly chasing. What would you do with that free time? Like if you finished all of the work that you needed to get done by today on Thursday, would you still get up and go to work tomorrow? Or would you try and take your kids out for ice cream or have a date with your spouse? Or what would you actually spend that free time doing? And for me, that's such a powerful question because so many of us are kind of rushing to finish the task at hand. But then once we do, all that we're doing is going into the next task. We're not actually soaking up that free time that we create. And what he makes the point of is the freedom that we're chasing, or the freedom that we should be chasing here, is the freedom to choose what we want to spend our time on. And that is so extremely powerful. If you could choose what you wanted to spend your time on, what would you actually do it with? And I believe, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I believe that part of why we just rush into this next task, or why we don't actually do kind of let this free space or this free time sort of hang out there, is the same reason that we're uncomfortable with silence. It forces us to kind of be alone with our thoughts. It forces us to make a decision rather than to do the next thing that's expected of us. And that's a feeling that so many of us are uncomfortable with, right? I mean, I know if Katie was on here with me, she'd be nodding her head and saying, yeah, I mean, that's something that a lot of us struggle with. And so this idea of free time that everybody's chasing, it's a great idea in theory. But then what happens when we do have this free time, when we do have this silence? We're kind of uncomfortable, right? And so that's really, really powerful as you're going through this. So the way that he describes kind of figuring out what you should spend your time on, because remember, as I said, productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about doing more of the right things. So the right things, how do you know if it's a right thing, if it's something that you should be spending your time on or not? And he creates this freedom compass here on page 49. And I think this freedom compass is really powerful because it talks about the intersection between things that you're really, really passionate about. So these are things that we get excited about. They kind of feed our soul. These are things that we don't tire of because we enjoy doing them most of the time, and things we're proficient at. And things we're proficient at are just things we're good at. So they might not be something that, we're really excited about. Like we might not be really excited about doing the dishes, but we might be the best person in our house at doing the dishes. So these are things that we kind of struggle with. And so in here, the things that you are most passionate about and most proficient at are the things that you want to spend the most time doing. And he kind of puts this zone, as he calls it, as your desire zone. These are things you're highly passionate about, highly proficient at. So you're really good at them, but they also really excite you. They feed your energy. So you're going to be able to work through those tasks more proficiently, actually, as I might put it. The other kind of opposite of that are things that you're highly passionate about, but you're not really that good at. And these aren't things that necessarily you shouldn't do, but these are things that I love. And I love how he put this. He talks about this being your distraction zone. So your distraction zone is kind of neat to me, because I think we all suffer from this. We all suffer from like, oh man, I'm so excited about this. I really want to get into this, and I'm going to spend a ton of time on it because I'm passionate about it, but I'm not really that good at it. And we sort of justify things in our distraction zone by saying, I'm building this skill set. Now, you absolutely can do that. You can build the skill set. Now, there's a key though. There's kind of this fine line of, eventually you have to get better at it. You have to become more proficient at it so that it can move into your desire zone and be something that you're highly proficient at and highly passionate about. Or you aren't building that skill and it becomes a distraction. And so it becomes something that like we're not really that good at. Actually, if you want to think about Facebook as something in our distraction zone, a lot of us wouldn't say necessarily that we're passionate about Facebook, but we might be passionate about people in our lives and socializing in that way. But we're not that good at it because we can't do it kind of quickly and accomplish those tasks and then step away from them. So it becomes a distraction. So I'm curious what you guys think. Feel free to drop in the comments there what you think about that. Now, total opposite of the desire zone is something that he calls the drudgery zone. Now that sounds miserable, but it truly is. So the drudgery zone is going to be things that you're not passionate about. So they feed you no excitement. They're not getting the fire in your belly going, and you're not very good at them either. So for a lot of people, this is going to be something like paperwork, like not that excited about doing it. It's not something that somebody like sits down and is like, man, I can't wait to work through, like hammer through all this paperwork, and I'm not very good at it. A lot of the time, drudgery zone tasks are things that potentially we could be better at, but our lack of interest in accomplishing that task or doing that task forces us to be less proficient because we're not going to spend that much time on it. So the drudgery zone are these things, they tend to be things too, that if you put them on your to-do list, they keep staying on your to-do list. So they kind of get avoided by us and we don't really like to do them. And then the last category is something that you aren't really passionate about, but you're extremely proficient at. And this is what he terms your disinterest zone. So something that you're super proficient at, you might be better than anyone else in your office at doing something, but it drains your energy. And he calls this graphic, and I'll put it down there in the group. He calls this graphic the freedom compass, which it's a great name, by the way. But what I love about this freedom compass is it really allows you to look at any task, not about the result of the task, but more about, is this a good use of my time? And I think removing the results from our decision making here really allows us to think about things much more objectively and much more rationally. If I'm able to evaluate, should I be spending time on this task because it is feeding my energy and I'm good at it, versus I'm like, it's a time suck and it's an energy suck and I'm not that good at it. Like that to me is so much more black and white in terms of how I can make a decision, versus I know I can get this done and I don't have to train somebody how to do this. And think about how many tasks in any given day we're sitting there saying like, oh, I could train my admin to do this, or I could teach my kids how to do this, or, you know, my spouse could help me with this, or how many things are we saying, but I can get it done faster. I should just get it done. It's so much easier if I just handle this. And the problem is those tasks can just pile on top of one another and our energy is sucked out. We've lost all of this time. We're not that productive. And so Hyatt's entire theory in this book is your goal is not, again, about doing more things. It's about doing more of the right things. And when you do more of the right things, you get the freedom, the free to focus on whatever the hell you want to focus on. And I think that is such an extremely important point for so many of us to kind of soak in on, is we're doing all of these things either because we think we have to or we think we should, and we're not really evaluating them in the right way. The other point that he makes that I think is a really great one is he talks about how limiting beliefs can create liberating truths. And what I love, or excuse me, not create, how you should swap limiting beliefs for liberating truths. And so he uses some common lines that I think we've all used in our lives. He talks about, a limiting belief might be, I just don't have enough time. And a liberating truth might be, I have all the time I need to accomplish what matters most to me. Whoa, that's a whole lot. I know all of our coaching clients get super uncomfortable when I say, you have exactly enough time for the things that you're willing to make a priority. That's that liberating truth. That's the point that he's making that says, hey, you've got to make some tough choices. And I'm not saying they're going to be easy choices. They are tough choices to say this is more important than that. To say I'm going to cut out here and put this client second so I can put my family first right now. That's not always the easiest choice to make, even though in our hearts we feel like it should be. But it is a liberating truth. It is true. You have exactly enough time to accomplish the things that matter most. What about, I'm just not that disciplined? I'm just not that disciplined. Man, how many times have we all said that? Like, I'm just a procrastinator. Well, when you're working in that desire zone that you have, and remember that desire zone is going to be something you're highly passionate about, so you're really excited about it, feeds your energy, and you're pretty good at. You're really proficient at it. Well, if you're working in your desire zone, it doesn't require that much discipline because you're excited about the tasks that you're doing and you're good at them. So you're not kind of suffering from that beating yourself down, self-esteem stuff of, man, I wish I was better at this. And the key that he makes, and this key point that he makes is, if you're designing your life where you're spending more and more time on tasks in that desire zone, you're not going to have that much discipline because you'll be good at the things that you're doing and you'll enjoy the things that you're doing. Just imagine what your life looked like if that's how you shaped it. That's crazy, right? For me, it feels insane. What about, I'm not really in control of my time? I mean, you guys know I'm a parent of some kind of elementary age school kids. And I think the thing is, any parent said this. Any parent has said, I'm not really in control of my time. I'm following my kid's schedule. And while I can fully understand what we're saying there, again, that's a limiting belief. So what's the liberating truth on the other side of that? The liberating truth might be, I have the ability to make better use of the time that I do control. How much time are we wasting on focusing on things that are completely outside of our control? And while we're wasting that time, unfortunately, what's ending up happening is we're saying to ourselves, oh my gosh, I'm worried about XYZ, and we're not controlling the things that we do have control over. We're not spending our time and kind of divvying up our time on things that we do have control over, and then we're losing all of our time. That makes no sense. I love this one, and this is a very common one in real estate. I tried that before, and it didn't work. I talk to folks about this point all the time, and I mean, I've said, I've tried that, it didn't work. And the reason why we get so frustrated when we say that is because we're thinking, I'm doing everything I can to make this work. And you might be, but your approach may be completely off. Now, I like to use the analogy of a door. And if you have the analogy of a door and you're sitting in there and you're saying to yourself, okay, like I'm doing everything in my power to try and open this door, and the door is locked, you're not going to be able to open the door. Like, you can try pushing, you can try pulling, you can try turning that handle a different way. Like, you won't be able to open that door. Now, if you knocked on the door, and I know, again, knocking on the door is not the same as opening the door, but it is a different approach to getting through the door. At the end of the day, we get so caught up in a task of something like, man, I've really got to, focus on getting through this door. And we're so focused on opening the door that we lose focus on how can I get my way through that door. Now, this is the key here. Getting through the door is the end all be all. So if you knock on the door, you try that different approach, what are you losing? You're probably going to be more successful because whoever's inside might unlock the door and you can make your way through. We get so caught up in our approaches that we completely lose all understanding of this is how I can reach my end goal. So I think that's really important. Here's another great one. And in real estate, I hear this all the time. In life, we hear this all the time. My circumstances won't allow this right now, but they're only temporary. How many times have we said to ourselves, once I get to this point, then I'm going to take the vacation. Or once, my kids are this age, then I'm going to start taking more time off. And you talk to any parent who just had a child that graduated or who is graduating, and I've talked to plenty of them in the past few weeks, they all tell you the one thing. My kids are 8 and 9 right now, and they've all said the exact same thing to me. Alyssa, the days are long, the years are short. Take the time and spend the time with your kids. Spend the time with your family. Now, obviously, that's a family example. There's a million other examples that you can say, but the real question is, whatever you're saying are your circumstances right now, they're only temporary if you make them temporary. You've got to heed kind of that warning that you're giving yourself of, oh my gosh, like, what if I don't get out of this? What if I don't get out of this set time or this set way of life, and all of a sudden I'm looking back in 10 years and like I've worked all of this time and like I don't have all of this stuff. Like that doesn't make any sense. You have to create the circumstances that allow you to achieve what it is that you want. I'm going to use this last one. I didn't particularly like this example, but I'm going to use this example because I think it might be helpful for some of you. I'm not good with technology. Now, I didn't like that example because I just inherently am pretty good with technology. But I do think it's an important example to use because it is an important limiting belief that many of us have. And the liberating truth for I'm not good with technology is true productivity doesn't actually require complex technology or systems. It's more about aligning your daily activities with your priorities. And anybody could do that. That is so true. Like if you all of a sudden, like, again, going back to that door example, if you get it out of your mind that you're going to be who has to open that door and you instead focus on how can I get through that door, all of a sudden, all sorts of things will come to mind. All sorts of things doors will actually open for you. And I think that's so important is you have to be focused on what are my priorities? How can I align my daily activities with those priorities? And then what am I going to do to be sure that I'm focusing on the right things versus just more things? And that's key. Now, the last point I got 2 more points that I want to go over tonight. The first thing is, and we all know this, right? Whenever you're spending time on one thing, you're shortchanging something else. So for argument's sake, we'll talk about productivity and we'll talk about working more or doing more. Whenever you work more, you are shortchanging everything else. You don't want to admit it, but it's absolutely the truth. If you are working late at night, you are shortchanging your family. If you are not getting good sleep because you're working, you are shortchanging your sleep. You're shortchanging your health. You're shortchanging your exercise routine. All of these things get shortchanged when you are focused on working more. That is not good for you or your long-term success. Anyone who has heard me speak has heard me speak on this exact thing. You have to be focused on rejuvenating your body and your mind. You have to be focused on what he says are 7 things. Sleeping, eating, moving, connecting, playing, reflecting, and unplugging. He believes this is how you can replenish your personal energy. Now, when you are focused on doing things in that desire zone, the things that you're highly passionate about and highly proficient at, keep in mind, you will use up less of your energy, your personal energy. So you will have to rejuvenate a little bit less. That is really important to keep in mind as you're focusing on, okay, are my daily activities aligned with my priorities here? You have to be focused on the energy and time. How can you build into your energy, and how can you build into rejuvenating your body and your mind and your spirit? I think this is really important. Then again, lastly, as he talks about cutting things to focus on the right things. Now, many of us focus on trying to delegate or trying to set boundaries. And he talks about what he calls flexing your no muscle. And for me, this was unbelievably helpful. And the reason why is we've all heard it. Whenever you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. But whenever you say no to something, you're potentially saying yes to something other than that. And as if we're following his theory of productivity is not about doing more things, it's about doing more of the right things, then we have to be able to say no. The big problem is so many of us have in our minds in this preconceived notion that no is a negative thing. And that is just not the case. We fear saying no for a few reasons. He talks about the first thing is we'll say yes to things because we want to be accommodating. I can get with that. I want to accommodate people, so I will sometimes say yes to things that potentially I probably shouldn't. The second reason, sorry, I have to take drinks here and there without Katie because I'm talking a whole lot more. The second reason that we oftentimes say yes is because we are attacking, kind of. And this is where we're valuing our own interests over the over the importance of that relationship that we have with the other person. And so we don't want the other person to feel attacked, that we don't want to do whatever they're talking about. So we'll say yes. And it's a little bit like accommodation, but not exactly. And then the last is we'll just avoid. And when we avoid, we say nothing at all. We don't say yes or we don't say no, but unfortunately what that does in most cases is it really compromises the relationship, which is why we're saying yes half the time to begin with. So it really doesn't actually help us. Now, here's something that a strategy that he uses, and this was possibly one of the most powerful points of this book. So if you have listened to nothing else that I've said, try listening in here. He talks about using a strategy called affirmation. And he believes that this creates a win-win situation for all parties. And it doesn't sacrifice the relationship that you have with the other person, but it also doesn't sacrifice your priorities here. What this theory kind of describes is, first, you say yes. And when you say yes, you're not saying yes necessarily to the other person. You are saying yes to yourself. You're saying yes to protect what's actually important to you. That is something that we don't do. We don't say yes to ourselves enough, or nearly often enough, if you're ever saying it. The second thing that we do is we say no. Your answer to this person continues with, it's a pretty matter-of-fact no. No, I can't do this. You don't want to leave any wiggle room or ambiguity because that might leave open the possibility that, hey, I could do this another time. That's not what you want to do. You're not merely trying to reschedule to when you have more time, because that doesn't achieve what the end goal is. And what's the end goal? Are you aligning those daily activities with your priorities? Rescheduling something that isn't going to be in your desire zone at any time, isn't doing that. And so you have to not leave any wiggle room and be pretty firm about this. And then lastly, you say yes again. You end by affirming the relationship again, but offering, and this is what I love, offering another solution to the person's request. So he uses an example, and I'm going to read this example to you because I think it's super, super interesting. He talks about as being an award-winning author, he gets a lot of requests from people to read their manuscripts and to kind of give them feedback before and talk to them about getting published and things like that. It's a common email that he gets and a common request that he gets. And so he has created a template that he uses when he gets these requests because physically he can no longer accommodate all of those requests, one. Two, it is not in his best interest and the interest of accomplishing his goals to accommodate all of those requests, which that's really important too. So this is what he says. Congratulations on your new proposal. Very few authors make it this far. Thank you for your interest in having me review it. That's the yes. That's his yes of saying, wow, like, great, I'm affirming you. You've done great. Then he moves to his no. Unfortunately, due to my other commitments, I'm no longer able to review proposals. Therefore, I must decline. Notice here, he didn't leave any wiggle room. There's no confusion about if he's going to do it, if he could do it in a month, if he's going to do it another time. There is no confusion. He sets a clear boundary. He gives a firm no, but damn if it's not polite. And finally, he wraps it up with a yes and that alternate solution. However, I can give you some guidance on how to get published. If you haven't already done so, I recommend you start by reading my blog post, Advice to First-Time Authors. He links it. In it, I offer step-by-step instructions for what to do first. I also have an entire audio course called Get Published, which distills my 30-plus years of publishing experience into 21 learning lessons. I hope you find this helpful. That's what he says. Now, he gets these amazing replies of, no problem, I really understand, thanks for getting back to me. Every now and then, he's going to get a negative response, but the people that are giving him that negative response are people that do not understand what he's doing. And frankly, they're people that don't respect his time. Because if they did respect his time, they wouldn't have made the request in the first place. Now, we can all do this. We can flex our no muscle by setting these strict boundaries and getting out of some of these commitments that oftentimes we take on. I mean, I know if you're anything like me, there's times where you say, man, I forgot that I said yes to that. That's fine, but I wish I could kind of get out of that. And you really struggle with it. And you do it, what do? You do it anyway, and you spend most of your day catching up after that. I get it. I've been there. But when we do those things, we are taking away from our progress, our potential at success, and our ability to achieve our goals. So you absolutely have to include these boundaries. It's just something that has to happen. That's how he eliminates tasks. And lastly, he finishes up by talking about automation and designating tasks as well. And so automation, I think, is really powerful. He talks about not necessarily like at the click of a button. What he uses is automation, which I really like, is solving a problem and kind of putting that solution on autopilot. So for instance, one of the things that he does is he templates out pretty much almost everything that he does on a repeated basis. And so that's anything from, because he speaks, he does presentations, he has a proposal template, he has a bunch of email templates, all of these things. Now, there's nothing in those templates that forces him to not customize them to the situation. But think about it. If you're customizing a templated email, it takes you maybe 5 seconds versus 5 minutes or 20 minutes each time you're writing it out. So if you can find some of those automated tasks that you can just automate in your day. And automation here, again, is a huge, huge misconception. Automation does not necessarily mean technology. So that is really important to understand. Technology can provide great automation solutions, but they are not one and the same. Lastly, he talks about delegating. And when you're delegating tasks, he talks about what should you be doing, how you've used this freedom compass to develop. Should it be a task that you're handling, or should it be a task that you're delegating? And this is my favorite part of the book, is when he talks about consolidating, because consolidating is one of these things that I think we don't do enough. Consolidation is all about, and the example that he uses, I've used with many of our clients. So as our clients are listening, you guys are probably saying, oh, that's where she got that from. But he talks about it in the context of an actor or an actress, and how he has front stage days, which are the public facing days where he's doing kind of that public facing stuff where they're a little bit in charge of his time, but he's stacking those activities. And then he has backstage days, and the backstage days are like his in-office catch up on emails, catch up on Slack, updating websites, writing blogs, things like that. And by stacking like-minded activities, he's able to work through those tasks significantly faster than if he, say, went on a listing appointment, came back to the office to try and work on paperwork, then went out on another listing appointment and tried to catch up on that paperwork that he didn't finish before. See, all of these tasks, actually, it takes us, on average, I know I've talked about this with many of you, it takes on average 20 minutes to get back on task after we've lost focus of whatever task it may be. So he talks about what an incredible amount of time we're wasting. I use that stat early on in the show to make that case of we're wasting so much time by trying to get back on task, when if we could establish our lives and consolidate some of these activities in order to establish a process in our lives that is much more sustainable, we'd be much, much more successful. So if you didn't read it, the book was Michael Hyatt's Free to Focus. I highly recommend it. It is a book that I know myself I will definitely read again. I know Katie got a whole lot out of it. I'm sure that she's going to be on the interwebs commenting and writing away. As you guys know, we obviously had book club on a different night this month. And the first Thursday, or the Thirst Thursday in July, is the 4th of July. And I don't know about you guys, but I will definitely be watching some fireworks on the 4th of July. So we will not be having book club on the 4th. Instead, we will be having it the following Thursday, which is July 11th. And our book is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. So, you know how I talked about, hey, this is my love language. This is apparently not my love language. I have not read the book yet. I am going on vacation in 2 weeks, and I plan to read it on vacation. But it is a story as opposed to a kind of how-to. And Katie came up with this pick, so she could probably describe it much better than I can. But as Katie says, she read it years ago, and it changed her life and her approach to almost everything she does. And I don't know about you guys, but I can definitely get behind anything that has helped make Katie who she is, because I think she's utterly fabulous. So this will be our book. We'll drop the link down below. You'll obviously see it on the Compass South, all of our channels. But other than that, thank you guys so much for joining. We loved having you all. And we will see you in July. Happy 4th of July. And Katie, you get well soon. We miss you. Don't worry, guys. Katie will be back in July. So talk to you guys soon. Have a great night.